Hola a todas, todos, todes que se están conectando ya a este nuevo panel público en Conecta, donde nuestra intención es conectar y también presentar, conversar, reflexionar sobre las posibilidades que tenemos hoy día los creadores de obras documentales y quienes nos dedicamos al bonito mundo de la no ficción y ver cómo podemos expandir mucho más nuestra audiencia, trabajar mucho más juntos y conectados. Nuestra idea es poder compartir con invitados de todo el mundo sobre su experiencia, sobre su trabajo, así que desde ya, tanto en este como en los otros paneles, agradecemos a cada uno de ellos y de ellas que han podido compartir hoy día. Hoy nos juntamos nuevamente, nos conectamos para reflexionar un poco también en torno a las audiencias siempre, ¿no? En este caso, las audiencias que no están en nuestro continente latinoamericano, sino que de hecho se encuentran más al norte. Antes de comenzar y de presentar a quienes nos acompañarán hoy día, quiero agradecer públicamente nuevamente a Paulina Sar y a Paulina Cortés, que nos acompañarán hoy con lengua señal chilena para la audiencia que nos acompaña hoy y esperemos que nos acompañen toda la próxima semana también. También estamos con traducción simultánea de inglés a español para quienes quieran escuchar la conversación en idioma original de español. Pueden apretar en el Zoom webinar el botón de interpretación y podrán escuchar, ya que la conversación será principalmente en inglés con nuestros invitados. Hay un desafío que siempre es muy grande, ¿no? Que es cómo llegar a otra audiencia y espacios de exhibición y ventanas que permitan al documental conquistar a esa audiencia. Y uno de los grandes desafíos para Latinoamérica es Estados Unidos, ¿no? Y todas esas ventanas que ahí podemos ver. Y hoy día estamos con una gran invitada que representa a uno de los programas quizás más antiguos para la no ficción en ese país, POV. Nos acompaña hoy para contarnos un poco más cómo trabajan, cómo trabajar con ellos, qué clase de películas están buscando. Así que agradecemos gratamente a Nicole Tsien, que está hoy día con nosotros representando a POV, que va a compartir su experiencia con nosotros. Y para guiar esa conversación, para hacer quizás las preguntas que a algunos no se nos ocurren y para también compartir su experiencia, está con nosotros Inti Cordera, director y amigo, director de DocsMX, importante productor también mexicano que nos acompaña hoy día también para compartir junto a Nicole y junto a todos los que se están conectando. Así que nada más que decir para usar mejor el tiempo en lo que nos hoy día convoca. Le dejo la palabra a Inti. Amigo, muchas gracias por acompañarnos y gracias a ambos por compartir con todos nosotros y nosotras. Muchas gracias. Inti, es todo tuyo.
Muchas gracias, Diego. Muchas gracias a todos y todas que nos acompañan y felicidades por esta edición de Conecta. Y bueno, como bien lo decía Diego, vamos a conversar, vamos a tener un diálogo con Nicole sobre esta importante barra en televisión para el género documental, que es POV, Point of View o punto de vista. Así que, pues, well, thank you very much, Nicole, for joining us at Conecta. This is a virtual room in which we are right now, and I'm happy to meet you here, although it's would be better when the next time we'll meet in Santiago de Chile on live, no? And well, I would like to start or begin asking you to share with us not first what is POV, but what is American Documentary, AMDoc Association? I mean, to understand who built this strand or this space on television. But if you can tell us, explain us, what is AMDoc?
Yeah. So American Documentary is a nonprofit arts media arts organization that actually produces POV for PBS. So it's important to distinguish. So POV, it's a series on PBS, which is public television here in the US. But we are a series that's on public television, but we don't necessarily like represent all of public television. Everything that we do is in contract with PBS, and ultimately they sign off on everything. But American Documentary really represents the nonprofit organization behind POV. So POV is like the flagship series and kind of the center of the work that we're doing at American Documentary. But you know, broadcasting and programming, which is the work that I do, is like a small portion of the larger work that we're doing at AmDoc. So American Documentary also represents, you know, the engagement work that we're doing. So, you know, we're not just concerned with people watching our films, but we really want people to interact and engage with the films that we broadcast. So there's a big educational and outreach and grassroots component to the work that we do. We also have an interactive arm within AmDoc that is POV Spark. So POV had the first website on PBS, I think sometime back in the 90s. And really, like, even at that early stage of what, you know, internet connections can look like, kind of pre-social media, you know, our founder of POV Interactive really realized what a platform the internet can be for viewers to further engage with films. So, you know, the interactive arm is kind of continuing this work, and they're really doing a lot of work to expand the reaches of nonfiction. To, you know, they're doing a lot of work in you know, VR, AR. They're also looking at different platforms. So, you know, we for a while back created some documentaries for Snapchat, which, you know, what does nonfiction look like in a very radically different format. We're about to do one on Instagram that'll be unveiled sometime this year. So that department is really looking at where can documentaries go next, and not just, you know, straight linear documentaries or, you know, for television, for theater, just really like experiencing nonfiction. And then, you know, another part of the work that we do is also with artist services. And so, you know, we have a development team that's really, you know, because American Documentary, leveraging the work of POV, we're really well known in the documentary industry, and we definitely have power and say as a, you know, as a legacy organization. And so there are different initiatives that we will take on through the year to also try and support filmmakers. And so, like earlier in 2020, we had an artist emergency fund, which is a continuation of something that we were doing to try and promote artist sustainability. So these were grants that didn't necessarily have to go towards a project, but really to help artists and filmmakers sustain their livelihood. So whether it was, you know, they needed money, you know, because they can't pay rent, or for medical services. And so we revamped it as like a short term, I guess, solution for, you know, all of the income lost through COVID. Because we are a national, like a US based nonprofit, a lot of our work is based around US filmmakers. But also, you know, some of the supports that we do, you know, for international filmmakers in particular, I would say is more project based. But essentially, yeah, AmDoc encompasses all of the work that we do beyond the broadcast of POV.
Okay, and now let's talk about POV. How did it was conceived? When did start doing broadcasting? I don't know, maybe give us a little idea on what is POV.
Yeah, so POV were the longest running documentary series on PBS. And we started back in 1988. So this was founded by Mark Weiss, I believe actually out of Sundance Film Festival. I think, you know, in a desire to, you know, bring a lot of the great films that he was seeing in the festival circuit, bringing them to an audience on television where it is accessible. And, you know, I think definitely like building off of, looking back from our first season and throughout the years, like we've definitely broadcasted a lot of, classic like documentaries, such as Food Inc. Or some films from the Up series. But I think also like POV as a platform has definitely launched the careers of a lot of very well-known filmmakers or filmmakers who have, will become well-known. So like Marshall Curry, who's been nominated for several Oscars for his feature and for his shorts. We broadcasted his first film, which was Street Fight, which was about the then mayor of New York, Cory Booker, and have really as a programming mission, we really embrace like veteran filmmakers. So filmmakers who have done this for a long time, have multiple very well-known films out there, but also really embracing first-time filmmakers. I think one of our more recent successes from the past few years was we co-produced Bing Liu's Minding the Gap, which was this young filmmaker in his late 20s at the time, his first film, which ended up getting nominated for an Oscar. And I think it's something that our staff is really excited about, is just meeting all kinds of new filmmakers and seeing all kinds of films out there.
Okay, now to help our audience understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, PBS programs a strand of documentaries for PBS, the National Public Broadcasting Service of the United States. But there is not just one PBS, there are several PBS in the States.
Yeah.
So you provide them with content.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Sorry, what was the end of your question?
No. So you program for all those broadcasters around the United States.
Yeah. So the way PBS works is that there is the national series. So PBS is in all 50 states and US territories. But the way that it's divided, so each region, and it's usually like a big city, they have a PBS station, and these stations are all members of the kind of larger PBS network. But each station is in charge of its own programming. So like in New York City, I'm in New York, so we, are a pretty big city. We, I think if you think about it market-wise, we're probably the largest market in the US. We have at least two actually PBS stations within kind of the New York City region, and then New York State also they have divided stations kind of to cover different parts of the New York State. So sometimes there is overlap with the stations in terms of the region. Sometimes the station is the only one there. But essentially, these stations pay membership to PBS and are required to broadcast certain hours of kind of nationally prescribed content. So POV is one of the national strands. Our suggested airing time is Mondays at 10 p.m. Or sometimes 9. And this is generally the kind of documentary night on public television. But each station, sometimes, they already have different programming, so they may not always slot POV at 9 p.m. But we're guaranteed to broadcast on these stations, even though it might not be at Mondays at 10. And I'll say, so POV is one of the documentary slots on PBS. We broadcast typically from June through the end of September. So it's like this late spring, early summer through early fall. And then there's another series called Independent Lens, which we share that Monday night slot with. So they broadcast whenever POV doesn't broadcast. So, typically from October to May of the following year.
So can you give us a little idea on the audience? I mean, since it is a national broadcasted slot weekly, throughout the United States, I mean, I may imagine your audience can be millions of people.
Yeah. And it definitely is. I think our numbers were in 90% of the households in the US. So you can imagine how many, millions of people that we're reaching there. But I think, kind of to break it down further, we know like our TV audience does tend to skew a little older. So, maybe they're in their late 50s to 60s and above that are watching on television. But we do also have a digital presence. So all of the films we do end up streaming on our website for free, just as a public television entity. We want to make sure our content is available for free so that folks don't have to pay for it. So, we know in our digital space that we can get, slightly younger. So I'd say like your 30s, your 40s, your early 50s. POV is definitely, it's definitely one of our weaknesses. We are not reaching younger folks, but I think really trying to build audiences through social media is how we get, how we tap into some of younger audiences. And definitely like within the PBS world, like they have a YouTube series, PBS Digital Studios, definitely has a good reach into the younger demographic. But things that we do know about POV audiences who watches through television is that we have some of the most diverse audiences within like the public media system. So we tend to reach a lot more Black heads of households, Latin and Hispanic households, Asian households as well. And that also our audiences tend to also be from more lower income communities, so that the income bracket is on the lower end. And so that way we definitely know that, these are people who may not necessarily be, watching films in movie theaters, that we're really trying to, cross classes and race barriers with our audience.
Okay, now let's talk about the content. What kind of content do you program? I mean, I understand they might be different slots, no, for POV. Is the broadcasted slot weekly, but you have others, no, in digital, through also VOD in the website. But tell us, I mean, what do you program? What kind of stories do you look for these different audiences?
Yeah, so I program for the feature series. So that's on broadcast television, and it also streams. And the video on demand stuff, I think it's usually available through PBS. So it's for people who want to access the programs that we broadcasted whenever they want, or if they're, so these PBS stations also collect membership. So you can also pay to be a member of a PBS station, which gives you access to maybe some titles that, the broadcast already passed and the streaming window is closed, but there's kind of some certain exceptions for paid members of PBS stations. But, that's for our feature series. We also started a broadcast slot for shorts. And so this is for, it's a 30-minute slot. So we're either programming one, 30-minute short, or we're pairing 2 to 3 to 4 films together for like a thematic pairing. And so this is for broadcast. We know, we created this slot, the short slot, knowing that there is a lot of platforms for shorts on the web, that, a lot of shorts stream in different places, but may not necessarily have broadcasts. And so that's why we started doing this half-hour episode. But yeah, so, generally for the feature and for the shorts, programming mission is quite similar. We're looking for character-driven films that are putting a human face to contemporary social issues. But I say social issues in the broadest sense possible. A lot of the films that we broadcast, have really like kind of urgent social issues that they're dealing with, and that, a lot of times filmmakers are making these films so that they can, make changes to legislation, make changes to someone's situation. But we also look for films that are just really great stories, just, films that are talking about life, the good and the bad, just showing what life is. And so that's why I say social issue, because kind of any human story is going to talk about a social issue. But we POV, we do consider ourselves like a showcase of the best and boldest of independent storytelling. And so we are looking to highlight filmmakers who are using unique approaches to storytelling, who are showcasing diversity both in front of and also behind the camera. I think we're also looking for films that are not often seen on mainstream media, or that if it covers a topic that is a really like popular topic, we're looking for something that goes beyond like the headlines and the news stories, that really show nuance that people may not get from reading the newspaper or watching the news.
Now I wonder, from the whole content and programming of POV, do you have an average, a percentage of national, US content and international content?
Yeah, so it used to be the case where it was used like maybe 60% US domestic and then 40% international. But I think in the past few years, we have really embraced ourselves as a series, as one of the few series that broadcasts international films in the US. And I think that's something that we definitely pride ourselves on in showing audiences what are the stories outside of the US that are really great and really interesting for them to see. And one of the things I know that distinguishes us from other international series also, we want to try and preserve as much of the filmmakers artistic vision as possible. So we don't dub our international content, we really embrace subtitling. And that the little things that we can do to help bridge the gap between our viewer and the international films. One really small thing is that we ask for larger subtitles when the TV version gets delivered to us, just so it plays better in a screen, in a kind of smaller format. But also that the work that we do with engagement, I think also helps build a lot of context and background information. Or provide resources for people who, watch a film and are really interested in learning more, that there's a place that they can go to learn more. So some of the engagement materials we provide, we have a delve deeper reading list where we're working with librarians to find both fiction, nonfiction, and also young adult, books and resources that are related to topics of the film. We also produce a discussion guide with background information and also questions to help someone facilitate a conversation. And that we also produce a lesson plan with all of our feature films so that educators can also use the film to teach typically high school students, sometimes college level students, but really we're trying to get our audiences, engaged in topics as much as possible. And I would say also, some of the work that we do in engagement also helps, I think one of our goals a lot of times with showing these international films is to also, show our audiences that things, there's a lot of similar things happening in the world. I think a lot of our experiences are shared. And that, if we have a film that's on a very specific issue internationally, like we'll find local communities where similar happenings, where similar issues are taking place, and, kind of target organizations on the ground in that way. Or, for a lot of our films that are dealing with diaspora communities, we'll also look for those communities within the US to connect with as well.
Okay, I think you already explained, but when you refer to feature documentary, you mean long feature documentary. So you can span not only 52-minute documentaries, but
Yeah, it's our two. It's well, we have our two slots are at 52 minutes or 82 minutes. And you know, when we look at films, we do look at films regularly beyond that length. So, you know, a lot of times it is like a 90+ minute festival version. And, you know, usually when it comes down to talking about acquisitions, that's when we begin the discussion of what a cut down to broadcast length might look like. You know, what we're told from PBS programmers is that you know, they prefer the 52-minute because, you know, it kind of leaves less space for kind of, they need to find extra content for, you know, to fill up a half an hour with the 82-minute. But I think, you know, really we embrace both lengths, and occasionally we'll get films that come in the middle, which feel good as is and don't need to get cut down or lengthened, and we can find, you know, shorts to pair with that to build out that 82-minute slot.
Okay, maybe many of those who are listening to us will be now wondering how to start the process of submitting a content, a documentary, no?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, I don't have the exact data, but there might be 100 of documentaries produced in Latin America every year, no? And some of them may be suitable for your screen. I am a Mexican producer. I have already finished a film, and I think it might be, you already gave us an idea of what kind of content that you're looking for. So there might be some documentaries that doesn't fit to this content line, no? But who should we contact? How do you only accept or wish to see finished documentaries? Maybe I'm in a rough cut, and maybe I can give you, I send you to whom? How is the process?
Yeah, so you can email me. You can find me in the portal. But yeah, like there's like 3 or 4 members of the programming team, and we all kind of, you know, would normally travel the film festival circuit. We're really eager to meet new filmmakers. We definitely are best positioned to come on board with support closer to the assembly or rough cut phase. But we still, you know, do like to talk to filmmakers in development. You know, the reason why is a lot of the films that we work with are all results of long-term relationship building with filmmakers that we meet, that, you know, that people introduce to us, and that, you know, we're really trying to find the best moment within the production timeline and within like our timelines and our budgets to, you know, to you know, work on films that we're really interested in. You know, a lot of times, you know, maybe someone will come to us early and, you know, we're like, this looks great, but we, you know, we want to see more. And that later down the line, you know, when we see the rough cut, we see something really brilliant and really excited on, and then we end up working with them. A lot of times, you know, because we talk to a lot of filmmakers, we see a lot of films, a lot of great films, but ultimately, you know, we have 12, 14 slots. It's not a lot. It's like the rejection rate is quite high. And so like for us, we're all still about, you know, we want to support filmmakers. You know, maybe it's not your first film that we, you know, work on, but maybe the next film. That's, I think we're all kind of keen on maintaining relationships, and I think also, you know, helping to build connections. I think I personally, when I go to a lot of international film festivals, like, or film forums, I'm usually, you know, the only US based person there. And so I definitely try representing POV, but also, like, you know, introduce public media and the other strands. And so as much as we can also help make connections to partners in the US who, you know, might be able to help support. I think that's definitely something that we're absolutely interested in. But yeah, in terms of, you know, submissions, I would say we have a submission portal. So if you're film is in, like I would say, closer to assembly or rough cut phase or even finished, we have a submission portal where you can send that information to. But feel free also to send me an email to let me know that you're submitting through that portal. And I wonder, I think if I send it in the chat here, I think panelists and attendees can see the submission portal, but in any case, it's cfe.pov.org. So CFE stands for Call for Entries. So cfe.pov.org. But, you know, for films that are earlier on, so, you know, still in development or not quite at that assembly phase, like we welcome emails all the time. Maybe a little slow to get to it, but we will get to it eventually. And that's how a lot of the connections that we make also start.
In the case of those international films, do you also create engagement materials?
Yes.
I mean,
yeah. So all of the films that broadcast on our feature series has engagement materials created. So for shorts, we're not quite at the capacity to create these materials for every short film, but there are some short films that I think, especially covering topics that may be of big interest to educators in particular, we will sometimes create those materials.
You just mentioned you support filmmakers. That means that you may participate in the funding or the production of the films, or there is no production participation of POV?
I think it depends. We do co-productions every year. We're trying to do more of them, and have we have co-production discussions year round. Ultimately, we're maybe co-producing 1 or 2 films every year, and the stage that we're getting on board, it varies. So sometimes we're coming in midway through production. So the two co-productions from last year that were able to premiere were Softy and The Mole Agent. And both of those films, we came in kind of as the films were in production. And, you know, other times we're coming in, kind of later where, you know, the funds that we are providing maybe goes towards post and finishing. But I would say, you know, we're not super hands-on in that we're going to sit with you in the edit room and kind of, you know, tell you which cuts to make. You know, we do weigh in on rough cuts that eventually we broadcast, but they're all really taken as suggestions. You know, it's really up to the filmmakers to decide, you know, what of our suggestions they take and what they choose to not follow.
Can you give us some examples of recent Latin American films that you have programmed, and how they work, how maybe also like which was the engagement strategy? I don't know, just to have an example.
Yeah, so actually our upcoming season, so 2021 season, has a lot of Latinx titles. So one, we have Landfall by Cecilia Alderando, which is looking at Puerto Rico post-Maria, but also looking at the implications of US colonialism in Puerto Rico. And we also have Stateless by Michelle Stevenson, which is looking at border issues in Hispaniola and kind of what's happening with the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So those two, you know, I think we're in the process of forming what the engagement looks like, but you know, most recently, well, we're about to broadcast The Mole Agent in 3 days, so on Monday. So that'll be really exciting for us. But we also broadcasted The Infiltrators earlier this year, which is like a Latin American film. And I think this one in particular, you know, what struck us by it, one was the kind of hybrid of fiction and kind of fiction, nonfiction reenactments. But I think really looking at activism within the undocumented community, especially the youth activists, and kind of the creative strategies they've taken there. Our other season, we featured America, which is about elder care in Mexico. Also a story about brotherhood. And I think, those are kind of films, definitely like trying to speak to more intergenerational connections. I think Mole and America in particular, inviting viewers to think about, elder care and nursing homes and how we care for our elders. And then I would say other films that we've broadcasted in the past, like range from like big social issue films. So we had films like Voices of the Sea, which was about migrants from Cuba into the US, to Kingdom of Shadows, which was talking about the drug war. But then there's also like films that feature just really beautiful filmmaking. We had Brimstone and Glory, which was about the town in Mexico and the fireworks festival, which was just like beautiful to watch on a television screen. We had two other films by Maite Alberdi, The Grown Ups and Tea Time, Memories of a Penitent Heart, which is also like personal filmmaking, looking at, Puerto Rican identity on the US mainland, but also in Puerto Rico. So I think would definitely balance those kind of, issues. And for our engagement of all of them, I think, what we're either looking for community organizations that are doing work related to the films, or we're looking for in particular like films about Puerto Rico, trying to reach Puerto Rican communities in the US, just finding cultural institutions, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Besides Maite's work, I've heard some. I mean, Infiltrators is done by a Latino American filmmaker, also Brimstone and Glory. But how can we think in a more presence of? I mean, you mentioned. I mean, Tea Time and Mole. It's both are Chilean productions, but it's some maybe Colombian, Argentinian, Brazilians. How can we think in a more presence of this? Latin?
That's a great question, and I think that's something that as a programming team, I think we're always super aware of our blind spots and where we don't like where we're missing voices and stories from. And so like one, we are trying to, at least pre-COVID, was trying to expand our reach into different parts of the world and through film festivals. Definitely parts of South America were not super present in the continent of Africa. We haven't really gone to Australia, so I think we're always trying to reach out to more regional film festivals and try and establish more connections with filmmakers there. We do have some other Latino projects that I can't mention, but definitely reaches Colombia, maybe have a Brazilian film out there. We don't know yet. But yeah, I think, we're always super open and we really want to make those connections. So definitely like get in touch. Like, we're also trying to do our research and do our work to reach out to filmmakers. But yeah, I think we also rely heavily on word of mouth.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm thinking if there might be, I'm not sure the exact number, but I understand there are more than 35 or almost 50 million Latino US Americans right now. No, have you ever thought in a Latino POV or POV Latin?
That's a great question. And actually, a lot of our filmmakers are starting to caption their films in Spanish so that they can reach more Latin and Hispanic audiences in the US. So one of the big films that it was our first like 2-part series that we broadcasted in June of 2020 was called And She Can Be Next. And She Could Be color running for office in the US, and it features a lot of community organizers, particularly women of color organizers in Georgia, you know, as you know, they've been definitely key in, you know, a lot of the election results. But the film team, you know, was very keen on, you know, trying to reach a Latin base. So they had all of their films captioned for Spanish, subtitled for Spanish too. And there's a lot of organizations that are trying to organize filmmakers of color in the US. So there's within the public media system, there is this National Multicultural Alliance. And they, you know, there's an Asian American organization called CAM. There's the Latino organization called LPB, Latino Public Broadcasting. And they, you know, produce a lot of Latin American or American Latin films. And they also actually have a broadcast slot on PBS called Voces. And you know, besides them in public media, like outside, there's also NALIP, which is the National Association of Latinx independent producers. There's also even smaller organizations. So I'm part of a group called Brown Girls Doc Mafia, which I don't know if you can see. I'm actually wearing their shirt right now. And it's convened over Facebook, but it's a group for women of color, and not just based in the US. A lot of international, you know, we have a lot of international members also. You know, I think there's a lot of affinity groups and kind of these community-based community organizations, you know, coming out to really help support each other, because we know there's such a lack of resources from the institution-wise, and that, you know, trying to build up a support network and trying to build up, you know, sharing skills, sharing, you know, other call for entries. And I think even diving in, I think one of the things I'm really interested in is looking at international co-productions and, you know, kind of leveraging, you know, funds from the US with, you know, international funds to really get films made. And I think a lot of collaborations happen in this way. So, you know, for women out here who, you know, identify as women of color, like definitely recommend checking out Brown Girls Doc Mafia. Otherwise, there's, you know, other groups, I think definitely Latin oriented, like Mezcla Media, to name others that I can definitely help put folks in touch with also to kind of build solidarity with, you know, US and international filmmakers.
I'm going to go back a little bit on acquisition.
Yeah.
What kind of rights do you ask for? It's exclusive or non-exclusive? Because you already mentioned PBS. There is also another slot that I'm not sure if the name is Independent Lens. This, and you work only with producers, or do you also contact distributors?
We work with both, filmmakers, producers, directors. We also work with sales agents, and we also work with other kind of distribution companies. And a lot of times we start working with a filmmaker, and that, you know, maybe eventually they pick up a sales agent, then we end up working with a sales agent. But for broadcast, our license period is generally for 4 years, and that we have exclusive US broadcast for those 4 years. You know, there are sometimes exceptions, but pretty much it's exclusive, but that it's okay if it broadcasts internationally first. That is okay with us as long as we can get the exclusive US broadcast rights. Streaming is where we kind of have become more flexible, and our streaming rights are non-exclusive. And you know, for POV, we consider ourselves a filmmaker-friendly series, and we want to make sure filmmakers are making money off of their films. So, you know, our streaming rights are really, you know, can be more catch-up windows, so that, you know, they can also explore like streaming on other platforms. But we do want to make sure that our films are made available for a short period of time for free. So that's why we kind of organize our rights that way.
Could you give us an idea on an average or details on how much you pay for this 4-year term acquisition exclusive?
Yeah, so for feature films, I would say they start anywhere. Lower end is 45,000 or 50,000 US. On the upper end, it could be 100, 150 US. But that doesn't include, like, so that's just, you know, the license fee that we pay, but it, you know, it doesn't include all of the marketing work and our engagement work that it comes free with working with POV. So it's kind of, you know, the unadded costs, like the additional costs that, you know, come with working with POV.
And for example, do you see, I mean, or the term of I mean, let me try to do the right question. It deals with the content from other years. I mean, I have a documentary, or do you want very recent films, or you also consider production from, I mean, maybe not much, but 3-4 years ago?
Yeah, I think, you know, we typically are looking for more recent productions, but I think, you know, one of the things about that we're looking for with POV films is films that are timely, but also timeless. So, you know, definitely, like, we there's always exceptions that we make. And I think sometimes, you know, even, you know, we've been on air for, you know, over 33 years at this point, and that we have a lot of films from our catalog that sometimes we also try and bring that back up. So, you know, sometimes occasionally, like, you know, that we may have special initiatives to bring older films back. But yeah, like, typically we're dealing, you know, with more contemporaneous films.
Excellent. Well, we are close to the end of this very nice conversation, and maybe there are people around who are wondering or having other questions, and I will share the first one here in the chat. Is from Miguel Sofia. Seems like many are interested in your outreach strategies. So Miguel is writing here, no, what's the digital strategy you use to promote your films? And how do you include those elements from the beginning of a production? Maybe it's a question not only about POV, but a question to Nicole, Tsien. I mean, on your experience, when do you start the engagement or the strategies?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I should mention, so it, for us, like, it really starts when, like, our work really starts with filmmakers once we feel like we're at a good point in the contracting process. And I would say a lot of times we work with all sorts of filmmakers. We have a lot of filmmakers who come on board with a lot of support staff. So, you know, they already have, you know, a social media manager. They already have an engagement, an impact producer. You know, they've kind of built up their digital strategy or their engagement strategy in mind, in which case our teams are going to work together with, you know, the films team. So, you know, we're working not to replicate work, but really to build on what our strengths are, and you know, look at areas where we kind of do our work best, but, you know, and that the film teams, you know, whatever they can do, you know, they can kind of use that to their advantage. Other times we're working with filmmakers who are working on their film by themselves, and in that case, like, that's what our marketing, communications, and our engagement team is really there to support. So I would say, you know, one of the first questions that our marketing team asks filmmakers when we do kind of an onboarding meeting is, do you have a social media presence already? You know, do you have a Twitter? Do you have an Instagram? And, you know, in those cases, like, you know, we kind of do work to cross promote. You know, we do cut promos, you know, for YouTube that can get shared on Facebook, Twitter, you know, Instagram, all that stuff. You know, we're trying to kind of definitely build our digital audience. You know, occasionally we'll, you know, either live tweet the broadcast, or we'll, you know, I think especially this year have done a lot of live conversations, whether they were on Facebook or Instagram, to really try and build buzz around the film. But yeah, I would say, it really depends. Some film, some film teams come really kind of digital ready, and that, they've already been trying to build up a buzz since, production of the film. Other times, I think especially now, like we're in like such heavy like Oscar campaigning mode, like you can see a lot of people working, digital strategy, I think, particularly as the film gets released.
It's really inspiring to listen this experience on POV. I mean, maybe no, I would say we lack, but there's a lot of work to do in Latin America, promoting documentaries, especially to broadcast documentaries. No, I feel like sometimes we don't see the potential of the television screen. No, the advantage to have our contents, our stories to be seen by millions of people. Sometimes documentaries have a very wonderful and spectacular festivals route, but afterwards, the numbers of very successful festivals tour for a film may become in, I don't know, 10,000 viewers, no? Presential, which is very nice, but when you come to a screen as the one as POV presents, maybe you can be seen by millions of people, no? In your experience, because I've not forgot, but I wanted to leave this for the end. Who is Nicole Tsien? How are you here at the end?
How am I here? How did I get here? Or
Yes, I mean, why? Tell us a little bit on your professional experience too. I read some. I mean, you have been involved also in production.
Yeah, I don't have a film background.
What inspires you, Nicole?
What inspires me? I think meeting filmmakers and seeing really great stories, I think really inspires me. I think I love like passionate filmmakers. I love when filmmakers are like, I mean, it's and we'll, I think maybe I'll be taking meetings with some members of the audience later in the next week or so. But I mean, like, my favorite question to ask filmmakers is, why do you want to tell this story? And listening to the answers there, like, I think really shows a lot. Like, even though you haven't seen a trailer or you haven't read anything about the film, but just kind of hearing why filmmakers, want to tell these stories, I think really drives me. And I think also like that I don't have a film background. My background is in anthropology and international relations. But I'm really driven by kind of social issues and really, I think I learn a lot from my colleagues and from the filmmakers that I talk to, and just, it's really different work. I just love supporting them. And so, yeah, like, with POV, I mean, it's really where I grew up and I came to be, and that it's been really great to kind of to see the progress, to see, the films year in after year. I feel like every year, like we program a season and we're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to top that? Like this feels like the best season ever. How are we ever going to do better? And then the next year, you meet all of these other films and you're like, wow, okay, we were able to do that. How are we going to top this one? Yeah, and I think, it's definitely challenging. I wish we had all of the, time in the world to broadcast all of the films, because I think there's just so many amazing stories that, you want to tell people about. I feel like whenever I'm with my friends and, somebody talks about something and I'm like, oh, did you know there's a film about that? So like, I feel like there's just so many stories to share out there. And I think it's unfortunate that there's not enough like time. But yeah, like in a perfect world, like, we would program so much more.
you just mentioned or said something very important, no? In this global world, no, documentaries have become a very important tool, no? When you just said, no, there is a film about that, no, and there is a documentary about this, no, there is a, I don't know, there's a question from Michelle that maybe helps me know. Does POV team do educational outreach contacts with schools? I'm thinking that this is using documentary as a tool, not only for information and knowledge, but also for education, no?
Yeah, we do. And I would say a lot of times filmmakers have an educational distributor on board, in which case, if we get requests from schools, then we'll direct them to the educational distribution, because that's also a big way a lot of filmmakers make money, is through that educational distribution. But the really great thing about PBS is that it's such a household name here in the US that, you know, it's reliable. People know that they can get really quality content from it, and that PBS, you know, I don't know how many years ago, but started this learning media network, and it's essentially like they're pooling together all of these lesson plans so that teachers have a dedicated place where they can, you know, go and find resources to teach, to use, you know, any of PBS's programs to teach about stuff. So for most of our feature films, we're working with curriculum writers to write a lesson plan for, you know, using clips from the film, and there's definitely examples of that on our website. And yeah, that, you know, we also, I think, you know, work with a lot of different institutions. So whether it's like cultural centers or museums that are oftentimes hosting like field trips for students where they, you know, watch a film and kind of engage with the topic. So, you know, definitely like an engagement component is big part of our work. But I think also like there are some films that I'm also hopeful, like, you know, inspire, you know, younger students to become filmmakers themselves. I think like it's really exciting when you watch a film that are like, wow, like I can't believe this filmmaker told this story in that way. It's like really amazing. I used to work in the engagement department, and part of the things that we were doing was, you know, with all of the screenings that would happen, we would send out a survey to that, you know, the organizers would send to their audience members. And, you know, we would collect them and kind of use that as like more qualitative feedback. And I remember it was from like a student screening where somebody was like, I thought documentaries were boring, but this is not. And I think that's still one of my like favorite. I think I like cut it out and like put it on the wall, but I was like, this is great.
Maybe for those who are so interested in the outreach POV strategies, you can start following your social media, no? Maybe there can be found examples of how do you promote the films and how do you engage the audience to finally to make them watch the film in the strand, no?
Yeah. I think a big part of our work, like beyond, like actually, I think the work of AmDoc, so beyond just my team that's programming the films, is that we're trying to build the widest possible audience for the film. So we know in the US, not everybody watches television, not everybody streams, you know, TV or streams documentaries, but that sometimes we're reaching people in the community. So, you know, we work with a lot of regional libraries to, you know, well, sorry, this was actually pre-COVID where we did a lot of in-person events, you know, so we would screen at a lot of regional libraries, churches, in prisons, so with incarcerated populations. Now, obviously, that's something that we can't do, but what, you know, we know not every organization in the US has access to streaming or to, you know, content or, you know, even a high internet bandwidth. So that department is trying as much as they can to help facilitate virtual screenings to try and replicate as much of the in-person engagement as possible. But I know it's hard. Like I think even for me, like like virtual film festivals are a little difficult for me because I love watching films in theaters, and that watching from, you know, your computer screen is not the same experience. But I think like as much as these like connections that we try to make, I think it's good.
I'm afraid in any minute, Diego will jump in the screen. And maybe just to close this wonderful conversation, and thank you very much, Nicole, could you give a message or send some recommendation to Latin American filmmakers, not only regarding the submissions to POV, but I don't know, encouraging them in this storytelling, contemporary storytelling?
Yeah, I think like one, like just get in touch, like put your foot out there, and like, you know, I think just put yourself out there as much as you can and try and make those connections. I think you know, as part of the English speaking world, I think we're realizing that, you know, we're not the only ones out there, and that we have to open our minds and our gates to, you know, other you know, stories from around the world. And that I think, you know, I'm hopeful that, you know, like more, you know, as you know, kind of the Netflix and the Amazons of the world are picking up more documentary content, that they're also, you know, expanding on their international films. I think maybe or just, you know, I think I'm hopeful to foster definitely more collaborations with US filmmakers and international filmmakers. I think, you know, there's also some really, really beautiful films out there that, you know, are just really important to see. So I'm looking forward to being in touch with everybody here.
You just pointed some, I feel, very important issue to explore, and it's the relation between Latin American and North American filmmakers. No, there are around thousands of stories that can be told. And well, thank you very much, Nicole. It was very nice to talk to you. Thank you very much also for those who have been very active in the chat with questions, and congratulations and thanks messages. And thank you, Gustavo. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina and Paulina, for interpreting.
Of course, to Paulina, our interpreter, Nicole also in the translation, to Camilo and to Diego, muchísimas gracias. Well, see you around.
Thank you, Inti.
Get safe.